Hello everyone. I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar and the first session of our data management badging series. My name is Abby and I'm going to be your host for this morning. I also have Michael on hand today to answer any of your questions. So please do keep them coming throughout the session rather than waiting till the very end to ask those questions. I will try my best to pick them up during the session as well, and if I need to do any demonstrations. This session is going to last approximately 30 minutes, so it's a little bit shorter than our usual sessions. Before we start the session, I just want to cover some housekeeping. So as you join, you will see that you are placed on mute automatically. If you do have any questions, however, you can use the questions panel down the right-hand side of your screen by clicking the option that looks like a little speech bubble with the question mark in the middle. This is then going to open up that questions panel where you can send your questions to across, and me and Michael will pick those up for you. Do make sure that you do press that blue send button to be able to send it to us so we can actually see your questions as well. We do also have a handout for today. You can download this by clicking the button that looks like a little document with the folded corner. We always recommend to download these handouts as it does usually have links to our help centre and helpful resources as well. Just a reminder, all of our sessions are recorded and links to register for future webinars are going to be included in your follow-up email. So your the recording from today, the article for future webinars, so you want to register for future registrations, that'll also be included in your follow-up email, and so will the link to the recordings page as well. So just before we start the session, I just want to explain a bit how the badging sessions work. You might be new to badging with us here on the webinar team. So you need to attend 5 out of the 7 topics and the quiz session, and they have to be live sessions. It doesn't count if you watch the recordings. So it has to be live sessions for you to be eligible for the digital badge. When you attend the quiz, you do not have to get all the answers right. It just means it's your attendance on the live session that counts as well. You can share this badge with customers, suppliers, colleagues, on your email signature, or even on social media such as LinkedIn. You will receive your badge by the end of September via email, so it will be on its way. So please do bear with us on that front. I know we always get questions, where's my badge? I haven't received my badge yet. So you will receive that by the end of September. So keep an eye out for that, because these sessions are very popular when we do badging sessions, and we always get a decent amount of attendees on here as well. So do bear with us on that one. So as you can see, the sessions that we've got coming up. So today we're covering backing up. We've also got the data management tool, company archives, clearing your audit trail to remove all transactions, deleting customers, suppliers, nominal codes and bank accounts, clearing stock transactions and deleting product records. And then the last session before the quiz is flagging records as inactive to hide them from your list. So we've got a lot going on there, how to tidy up your software, how to make it run a little bit smoother if you've got a lot of data in there, and that's what all this badge is all about. Okay, so we'll get stuck in. So this is what we're going to be covering on today's webinar. So we're going to be looking at the importance of backing up, how to take a manual backup, how to restore a backup into your software. And also as well, we'll look at this, the scheduled backup option as well. This is a feature that's often missed. People aren't aware that it's there. So we're going to be covering that as well. And then again, towards the end, we'll cover the further support that's available to you. And like I say, if we've got any questions outstanding at the end. Okay, so let's get stuck in with the importance of backing up. So the process of a backup takes a copy of all the files that makes up your company, including logon name and passwords. And what it does is it consolidates that into one compressed file. This can only be accessed by restoring the backup into Sage 50 accounts. So you must have a copy of the software and a valid license to be able to restore that backup. Some scenarios where we recommend taking recommend taking regular backups. So for example, if a process does not go as expected, so if something interferes with the year end halfway through and you end up with errors, it could be that you've reconciled a VAT return accidentally or incorrectly, as though individual transactions can be have the VAT reversed, or the VAT flag reversed rather. You cannot reverse the whole process. And then lastly, when you are importing into the program, so you could be importing hundreds of lines, transactions, and half of them could be incorrect or duplicated. So as long as nothing else has been processed, you could restore back to before the import. We do have sessions specifically on importing transactions. So if that's something that you're interested in, check out our recordings page and you'll find the sessions on there. It could be disaster recovery. So it could be that your computer could break, so hardware issues. It could be that you've ended up with a virus, leaving you unable to access the Sage software. So if you've got a backup, once you're back up and running, you can use that backup to restore into your software and get you back to where you were left off. If your data becomes corrupt, the errors are unfixable, you will be required to restore back to an error-free backup if the errors aren't fixable. The reason for this is that the data files on your computer have become damaged. So this is why it's always important to be frequently taking regular backups and checking the health of your data. So the importance of backing up your company is ensuring your data is backed up at least once a day, depending on the amount that you process. And we'll come into that later on. If you process every day, then back up every day. If you process once a week, then back up once a week. The last thing you need in the event of, one of the examples I've mentioned earlier happens, and then a lot of there's a lot of reprocessing to be done. For example, if the backup you have was from last week, and Joe Bloggs has processed over 200 transactions, done a bank rec, a VAT return, that's going to be a lot that you would have to reprocess. Once a day is optional, but we strongly recommend as a minimum, as Sage does not store copies of your data. So it's really important to back up any companies you have on the 50 accounts software. That is a misconception with the 50 accounts desktop product. If we've had people call in, oh, I need a copy of my data, machine's broke, or something's happened and they don't have a backup. We do not store copies of your data, so you do need to be ensuring that you are taking regular backups of those companies, and also you might need to do, you might have a backup in multiple places, so then you've got a backup of a backup as well. So it's always about being, super cautious and super smart about protecting your data. So what I'll do now is we're going to go into the software. So I'll just pop over to my Sage and we'll demonstrate the manual backup process. So we're going to go to File in the top left. I'm going to go down to the backup process. You're going to be presented with this window here. So here you've got your list of what can be included in your backup. If you want a full backup, as if you've, as we refer to, you can click select all and it will take all of the options. But it might be that you just want to select a couple of the options or just the data files only. So we'll go through each of the options and what they mean. So first off, data files. So this is your normal day-to-day processing. So if you're doing backups every day, this is what we usually recommend to do as a minimum. So day-to-day processing, data files only. It might be that you've added some transactions, attachments to your transactions, so you might want to tick that. Again, these other options you don't have to do every day. It's just as and when you've added attachments and things like that. So this is any documents that you've added to the batch supplier. There's other areas, so it could be customer invoices, so on and so forth. We have done a session on transaction attachments as well, as that feature has recently been upgraded. So there's more places that you can add it to as well. So you might want to choose that one as well. But again, that's as and when. You've also got report files and layout templates. So this is if you've made any changes to customized layouts or reports. Again, you're not going to be customizing those every single day. So it might be that when you've made changes, you would include those as well. Next, you've got record attachments. So if you've added any attachments to your customers, suppliers, products, bank, nominal, departments, and projects. You've got image files. So if you've added image files to your products or services, so this is typically, I think, if you're using a website, if you've got it linked to your Sage. You've got company archives. So this is going to be covered as one of the sessions for company archives. So company archives is one that you're not necessarily going to take every, you don't take an archive every day. That's usually part of a bigger process, so clearing audit trail and year end. And then lastly, you've got Teamail database. So if you still use Teamail database, then you can include this in the backups as well. So for this demonstration, I'm just going to I'm going to choose data files, and maybe I've added some attachments in there as well. So I'm going to include that. So I've got my data files and my transaction attachments. On the right hand side, you've got your file name. It is automatically populated, but you can change this if needs be. So some people might want to change this. Well, it might be pre-import. So then you've got a definitive backup you can identify that was specific to pre-importing transactions. Could be a year-end backup, so you want to call it year-end. So you can call it whatever you like, but this is what it is pre-populated, but that is a free type box. Location, I'm just going to click browse. So you've got, you might want to save this to a USB stick, external hard drive, or you might just want to save it to the desktop or a specific drive on your machine. I'm just going to save mine to my desktop, and we'll click OK. So then I click OK. At this point, it is going to ask me if I want to check my data before you back up. We always recommend to check your data regularly. You can't do it at this point, but there is also a manual way you can do it through file and maintenance. So on this occasion, I'll just click yes to check your data before backing up. So it's just let me know I've got one warning in here. That's absolutely fine. We're not too concerned about warnings. It's when you've got errors that you want to be stop processing and fix those errors or investigate those errors as soon as possible. So I'm fine with the warning. I don't need to address that right now. I'll click close, and then it'll do the backup process. So to tell me that backup has been successful, that was quite quick. I have a small data set. I've only got 1,300 transactions in this company. So the more splits that you have, so this number down here, the more you're gonna, the longer it may take to do your backup, which is really important as to why we're doing these sessions if you need to clear down some of your data. It's telling me the backup has been successful, so we'll click OK. And that is the backup complete. So normally you would be doing data files as standard, but you only need to select other options when it is relevant So as I mentioned before, you don't want to be backing up reports and layouts every day when you added a logo and changed your bank details on a layout of your invoices 2 years ago, and you've not made any amendments since, or including the company archives, which hasn't been taken since year end. So it's just going to take up unnecessary space within your backup file on your PC. So before I demonstrate going into restoring a backup, I'm trying to cover some information first. I'm just going to pop back to my slides. Just bear with me a moment. Okay, so restoring the backup. So when might you restore a backup? So for example, you've run a clear audit trail up to the incorrect date, you've reconciled a VAT return incorrectly. By taking a backup prior, it enables you to go back to that time and redo. Beware though, anything that was entered after the backup was taken will have to be reprocessed. So for example, transactions, other processes that may have been completed. If you are going to restore over the top of live data, then please do make sure that you do this with caution, as it will overwrite the data. Additionally, if your data is held over a network or on remote data access, if you overwrite data, it will overwrite for everybody. So just use that with caution. If you have a multi-company license with us, which you can find out in your help and about page, under license information, you can create a new company by restoring from a backup file. So for example, you might want to try an unfamiliar process. What you used to have to do in the older versions is you would have, if you had a free space to restore a backup, then you could do that to practice a process that you might not be aware of. But we now have the practice company option available, so you don't have to do that. But it might be that you're setting up, you've got it all backup, or you've moved machines and you want to restore company data. You might want to restore from a backup to set up a company. When you do restore from a backup, on the back of the backup description box, it will tell you what is included in the backup file. So for example, whether it's data files only, or if it includes reports and layouts, or an archive. Once a backup is restored in, you will need the login details that existed at the time the backup was taken. As I've mentioned earlier, it copies the file that holds all the login details. So if they have changed since then, you will need to enter old details, or if your user profile did not exist at the time of the backup, you will have to use credentials that did exist at that time. So you might need to speak to a colleague about that. If you do not have the login details for your own or the manager user, we do have a process in place to get you access to the manager details, and that's just a case of contacting our support team. Okay, so, went back the wrong way there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through a little bit of a process here. I want to go through a timeline to show you what it might look like in terms of taking backups, and what processes, and what it might look like if you're restoring a backup. So first off, we've taken a backup on the 2nd of February. On the 3rd of February, someone has processed 200 transactions. On the 4th of February, a bank reconciliation was completed. On the 5th of February, someone processed another 50 transactions. On the 6th of February, 10 new customers and 1 supplier record has been added to the software. And then on the 7th of February, someone has calculated the VAT return just to see the figures, and they didn't want to reconcile at that point, but they've accidentally clicked, it happens, they've accidentally just clicked reconcile. Now, as I mentioned before, you cannot reverse a VAT reconciliation. So when you go into the VAT reconciliation process, and these big processes tend to have as the first part of the process is to take a backup first. So year end, VAT return, clear audit trail. Always take a backup first. Because what we're going to have to do at this point now is, because we've accidentally reconciled, we need to restore back. But we haven't taken a backup in 5 days. And you can see everything that has been completed in those 5 days. So what happens is, everything that we've processed in those 5 days has been overwritten. So as you can see, the importance of taking that backup, the impact it may have of not taking those regular backups. So what we'll do now is we'll go back to the software and we'll look at restoring a backup into the software. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my customers. We're just going to create a new record. We'll call it customer 001. See if that, I don't know if that exists. I don't think it has because it hasn't come up. So I'll just call it customer 001 and we'll click save. So let's have a look. We'll find that. There's my customer that I've just created. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to restore in. So file, we'll go down to restore. And this is where we're presented with this window here. No question coming there, and I can see Laura, my colleague Laura, has picked that up. Where can you find previous backups? You can find it in the previous backups tab here. You can see I've got different dates in there, and it tells me exactly the location of where that is kept. We're going to restore a backup in now, so we're going to use that one that I did before. So we'll go to browse, we'll go to desktop, and there is my bus dash limited backup. So we'll click open, and this is the box I was talking about, where you can see what is actually included, so data files and transaction attachments. It tells me the company name, tells me the version, and it's telling me where it's going to be restored to as well. Again, it's because we're within the company already, it's just going to restore it to the same company file. So we'll click OK. It's giving me a warning. This procedure is going to overwrite any data that's held in this current company. Do you want to continue? So we'll click yes. So we'll let that back in. So it's telling me that it's been successful. We'll click OK. And then it's going to ask me to log in. So as I mentioned, this is why you'd need those details that existed at that time. Obviously, we understand historical backups. Not every user may have existed at that time. So you can get support from our support team if you need to get back into a company. So we'll click log on. It's not the right password. So we'll pop in the password there. And it'll log us in. And that's us back into our company. Now, if we go to customers, we can see that customer 001 no longer exists in the company because we restored a backup and we didn't take a backup after we created that record either. So you can see the impact it can have if you're not taking regular backups. It's gonna, you don't want to have to be reprocessing all that company data. Okay, so we've done the manual backup. I've shown you how to restore a backup in. So I'm going to pop back to my slides and we're going to have a quick look at the scheduled backup option. Okay, so the schedule backup option. So the benefits and how it works. So not many people actually know this exists, and it's a feature that's actually been in the software for a number of years now, as long as I've been at Sage. That's over 4 years now. So this feature automates the process of a backup. Now it's not a replacement of a manual backup. I want to make that clear. So it takes place in the background. It backs up more than one company at the same time. It's stored on the C drive of the computer where the data is stored. So that may be if you just work off one machine, it'll be the C drive of that one machine. If your data is held over a server, then that's where your data is held. Then it may be the C drive of that server machine. Now the computer must be switched on, but Sage does not have to be open. It automatically checks the data if that option is switched on. But now for the schedule backup manager, only the manager logon can access this option. Now this option is actually switched on by default. And you might actually find you've actually already got some backups because of this option. But it's definitely what we're going to do is we're going to go through the some of the settings, how you can amend it to suit your business, as some of the settings that, like I say, are set to default. Now, as I've mentioned, this option should be used alongside manual backups and not as a replacement. So use both, because then you know you're always going to be covered. We've just got a question there. I don't have the scheduled backup option. You do have to be logged in as manager to see this option. If you log in as a normal user, it might be your name, then you're not going to see this option. But we'll pop over to the software and we'll have a quick look at the settings before we wrap the session up. Okay, so in the software, in your company, if you go to File, you'll see Schedule Backup underneath the manual, the normal backup option. Again, you're only going to see this if you are logged in as manager. So we'll click on this option. And this is the window you are presented with. So you'll have an overview. So this is where it's going to tell you about each of your companies you have set up on the software. You've got, so it's telling me no one's currently logged in. Obviously, we're in Bustash Limited, so it's counting me as being logged in, so it knows that I'm currently logged in here. This can also happen in the background. You know, sometimes with the manual backup option, depending on the setting you have set up, everyone has to be logged out when you do a backup. This will do it in the background, so no one has to log out. But again, don't use this as a replacement. This is think of your backup of a backup. So it's telling me, because it's just a check data as well, so it's telling me the check data. I've got no problems to report on some of my companies. One might have a warning. It's telling me when it was last done a scheduled check data, and it's when it's last done a backup as well. Now this is really useful as well if you do find that you do have errors in your data. This feature is really useful to identify when that potentially happened. I'm going to come to that in a moment. We'll go into the settings. So again, this is ticked as default. It is turned on as default, but it might be it's set to run once per day. Now, I've got mine set to 3:30, but it might be that I think as default it is set to 5 p.m. So if you finish before 5 p.m. and you switch your machine off at the end of the day before you leave, then it's not going to do that schedule backup. So what it's best to do is either change it so then it's on when you're still at work, or you know your computer's still going to be on at this point, or you can run it to once per day. Really good questions just coming there from Angela. Why should a manual backup still need to be done if you choose manual backup still done every day if you do a scheduled backup daily? Because it could be that your machine's not on, or you turn your machine off for whatever reason. There might be a power cut, or if you do leave it running, you might have a power cut. Your machine might turn off, so then you might not then have a backup. So it's just saving you. It's backing yourself up as well, just to prevent those disaster situations. Your machine might break. If you're not taking a manual backup, you could take manual backups to a USB stick, and then you could do your scheduled backups to your machine. So then if your machine breaks, you've got that backup on the USB stick as well. So you're just covering all bases. If your computer was to break, well, don't worry, I've got a backup to my USB stick or an external drive. So then you're always going to have that data to get you back up and running. So yes, going back to here, you can actually run it more than once a day as well. So you could have it running every 1, 3, 6 or 12 hours, and you can choose the time that starts from as well. But again, don't forget your computer needs to be on to be able to do that. You can also choose if you don't want to back up every single company. You might have an old company that's no longer used, and nothing else is being processed in it, but you just like to have it there for reference. And you might want to just remove that from the backups. But you can choose which companies are included in the scheduled backup. You can also choose as well the file types to include. So you can use the tick box to tick them all, or you can just tick whichever ones you feel is relevant. So you might want to do a full backup every day with a scheduled backup, or you might just want to leave it as data files. It's entirely up to you, whatever you feel works for your business. Again, the backup location is always where your data is stored. So it's going to be the C drive. So that'll either be the C drive if you're working local. If it's a server, then it's going to be the C drive of the server machine. So it goes off where your data path is. You can also come in here and find out. So we'll just leave that. What I'll do is I'll just leave that as it is. So we'll come into users logged in. So it's telling me at the moment I can come in here. And you can see I've only got one person logged in as manager to this company. But as if you've got a couple of backups, a couple of companies, sorry, you might see a couple of users logged in if that's the case, and it'll tell you how long they've been logged in and the computer name as well. So the check data results tab, this is the one that's really useful for if you do have data corruption. So you can come at the check data results. You change this for all time. Might be this year or this month, but we'll just change it for all time so I can show you. As you can see, it's got all of my companies that I have in the software, and what it's done at a certain time, whenever I've set it to. So you can see 3:30. What it's done is it's gone through each of my companies, it's checked the data, and it's put a little status mark against each company. So if it's a green tick, it's got no errors, warnings, or comments. If it's a little warning, if you've got a warning, it's a little yellow triangle. And then I think off the top of my head, because I don't have any with data corruption, I think it's a red exclamation mark. So then what you could do, you could come in here, identify at what point the errors occurred, and then find out, well, I'll go to the backup from the day before, and then you can restore that backup. The backup files as well, we've got some questions coming in terms of, does it replace the previous backup? It won't replace the previous backup. It will create another backup. So what you'll need to do, if that's the case, you can, if you wanted to tidy up, if you know you've got some backups from years and years and years ago that you no longer need, you might want to have a clear up, but it will create a new file every single time it does a backup. So it's entirely you how you manage your backups, but like I say, just do it with caution. Like Sage doesn't store copies of your companies with this particular product. So with Sage 50 accounts, so it is your responsibility to making sure that you're maintaining your data, doing your regular backups, so then you've got something to go back on if something was to happen. So that is the backup process in more detail. So I'll pop back to my slides and we'll summarize the session. We have run over just a little bit, so just do bear with me on that one. Okay, so just to summarize, Sage did not store copies of your data. Can't make that any clearer. You can select to do a full backup or just do specific areas. You can check your data without having to do a backup. Again, that's just in File and then Maintenance, and then you'll see the check data option as well. You can restore all the live data or into a new company, but just be aware, it does overwrite live data back to the point of when the backup was taken. Strongly advised to back up at least once a day minimum, but again, frequency is just based on how often you process. You do daily processing, then back up daily. But again, I know we've got quite people, asking how long, how often should we do full backups and things like that. It's entirely up to you. Again, with the full backups, it's just going to be a case of how often do you add. If you're adding in transaction attachments daily, then you would be including that one daily, and then further down the line, you might then want to add in, include archives when you've just done an archive. So again, just it's kind of just working it out for yourself in terms of how often you process and how much are you adding additional things like transactions and to your transactions, and then attachments to your records as well. The scheduled backup runs the process in the background and also checks the data when the machine is switched on. The scheduled option also can identify when errors have occurred in the data. If you want to find out more about what we've covered on today's session, again, I've included some articles throughout the session on your handout, but also I've just popped them on this slide here as well. So how to back up your data, checking your data is in good health, but also the guide as well for scheduled backup option. I'm going to give you the opportunity now to get your last of your questions in. I can see we've been pretty much on top of the questions so far that we've had come through. One of the questions is from Lorraine: how long should we retain all the older backups? Again, that's entirely down to you. How might be worth speaking to your accountant, or when you get audited, how many years do they require? You might want to keep that amount of backups. It's entirely up to you, but you'll know yourself in terms of how often you're processing and things. Okay, so Anders Michael's answering the last question. So just to let you know that we have webinars for Sage 50 accounts and payroll. If you don't remember, the exact link to how to get to the help centre, simply type in sage.co.uk/webinars. We've got live webinars, 50 accounts and 50 payroll, and then we've also got the recordings on there as well for also Sage Business Cloud accounting and for payroll as well. So they're all in one place. Sage.co.uk/webinars. Again, the links are going to be included on your follow-up email. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll wrap the session up. My mind's gone blank there. Yes, so thank you very much for attending today's session. Again, everything's going to be included in your follow-up email, so you're going to get that around an hour after the session has ended. When you leave the session, you are going to see a survey as you leave. Please do, if you can, pop any comments in there, what you liked about the session, what you would have liked to have seen done differently. We do always read every single comment on there. It doesn't have to be a long comment, it can just be a little comment, entirely up to you, but we do really appreciate that. I want to say thank you to Michael and Laura, who's been on hand today to answer your questions. And thank you to you all for your participation today as well. Just a reminder, we've got plenty of sessions over the next couple of weeks, so don't be shy and get registered. I want to say another thank you and take care.